can this camera find my face? Maybe. I have no idea if I'm going to be blurry, you guys. But I'm blue again today. Blue. So blue. Anyway, today's talk, today's update, today's things I have discovered have to do once again with the threat. Well, the threat. You will get to see this cover. I've been down and out. This time with a really bad kidney infection that turned into, I don't know, I think it might be a kidney stone. So I'm standing here by the grace of painkillers. And so this pretty much means that I've been spending a lot of time on a heating pad, unhappy that I'm trapped. And this means I don't have a lot to do. So I've been catching up on my reading. And I got to a part in the book that I discovered was really interesting. Dr. Jacobs is talking about the hypotheses of why the aliens are doing what they're doing over the years. And he's been around for them, so I suspect he might know a little bit of what he's talking about. In the 1940s and 60s, because they're all trying to figure out why the aliens don't go, take me to your leader. And one thing that he pointed out that I have actually said before is this is, of course, people being ethnocentric and assuming that the aliens are going to be just like us and be the kind of being that will be, take me to your leader, and would be approaching us for the same reasons that we would be approaching them, or at least ideally how we feel like we would be approaching them. From the 40s and 60s, it was thought, well, it's because we're just so hostile, we're warlike, and they see us and they're afraid for their lives. Okay. This was, of course, before people began to connect the dots that they have been here since at least, at least the turn of, BC era to AD. And then from the 70s to the 90s, another theory was put out that persists a little bit today, I've noticed, in that, well, they're revealing themselves slowly to get us used to the idea of visitors from outer space. Because once again, the fact that people have been getting visited and have known about them since at least the turn of BC to AD era, wouldn't make sense at all. I mean, this kind of theory is from the kind of people who think that mankind couldn't have built, a pyramid, which, by the way, has been debunked. We could still build one the old way today, and people have done it. It's called experimental archaeology. Look it up. According to Dr. Jacobs, there was a researcher in 1975 named Jacques Vallée, French, who took that theory and expanded it and said that being allowed to see the ships and everything was a shock absorber to help us get more and more accustomed to the idea. Of course, nowadays we know that if you see a ship 9 times out of 10, you've probably been picked up too and just don't remember. But that seems to be where things exploded, so that you get another theory, according to the book here, that the ships were disappearing because they're going into alternate realms, which means that the idea of alternate dimensions began to come into play. And do you see a correlation to the way people think it's happening today? There were these theories that mankind thought up that are getting used now and believed as fact with no proof. See, that's the part that really bothers me about this. There's no proof. You could carry me on a beam ship today and take me somewhere and tell me, well, we've taken you to an alternate dimension. You're now in the alternate dimension of Glorflax, and look, it's an alternate Earth. And I might be taken to Washington, D.C. That might be an alternate Earth. It might not be, but there's no proof. Apparently, J. Allen Hynek, according to the book, J. Allen Hynek is the one that first postulated the alternate dimension theory. Let that sink in. Okay, a humankind, a researcher postulated this, and now it is taken as fact by many people. And in the 1990s, a researcher named John Mack revived these old theories from the 70s, brought them back up again. In other words, these things had died. Now, if they were true, then why were they allowed to die? Let that, this food for thought for you guys. And he said, and I'm going to quote out of the book, "It is for us to embrace the reality of the phenomenon and to take a step forward, appreciating that we live in a universe different from the one in which we have been taught to believe." Which he's right, but it doesn't mean that these desperate theories from people trying to understand how the ships disappear back and forth, which, by the way, we now know why they disappear back and forth, and it's not necessarily slipping into an alternate dimension. It could be cloaking, it could be because I do have cloaking devices that for a while our cameras were able to beat, so that our cameras, like the one I'm recording with right now, could film a ship in the sky that your eyes would not be able to see. It's a trick done with refracting of light, not slipping into another dimension. And I've noticed lately that cameras don't always catch things anymore either. They've upped their game a little. This book was published in 1998, and in 1988 it was talking about the current hypotheses and theories. They say he's talking about how nowadays they feel that the reason why the aliens operate in secrecy is to keep our lives from being disrupted, and then he lists a lot of reasons of how that's not actually true, because our lives are still disrupted, and for sure they know. He postulated how they keep us from remembering, talking about how they bypass our short-term memory and go straight to our long-term when dealing with us, and how it has come out thanks to some contactees having the forethought to ask that the reason why they just don't wipe our minds entirely is because there are some things they really need us to remember for the next pickup. Okay, that's something else, because back in the 40s and 50s and even part of the 60s it was, well, it's a one-time pickup, but obviously it's not, and the aliens even are like, well, we just need you to be prepared for the next time we get you. So it's not even that they may or may not come. They know they're coming back to get you, and they've got it set up so that it's easier on them. So yeah, about that. But what I liked that he wrote in here was that they are very clearly do not want us to know what they're up to. They never give completely straight answers or really fully informative answers, and they give a variety of reasons why, starting from you wouldn't be able to comprehend and ending with just flat out not saying why. They don't want us to know. Okay, but you can figure it out, which he has been doing, and yeah. So this is some further reason to read this book, even if you don't agree. There's information in here that is good. I see it in forums all the time. People are like, oh wow, the Greys, we don't understand them. Well, I've known they were a plant life. And it was really interesting how he discussed a case he had that actually backed up how they ate. They eat through their skin, and that some of the hybrid children also eat through their skin. So these are things that you should really open your mind. Whether or not you agree with me on their agenda, which I'm sorry. Him pointing out the secrecy and the ways of them keeping secret just convinces me more. There has not been a thing that I have found that has changed my mind on their agenda simply based on actions speak louder than words. It just no. So that's what I have found out recently. Pretty interesting in my little search journey. I cannot stop recommending this book enough, and since I've had my time wasted by being ill, I'm hoping to finish this book soon so I can go to the next one. I don't know if I'm going to get another book by Dr. Jacobs or read one of the others that are on my shelves. But we'll see. Milo! I do not know how to say his last name, but you know who I'm talking about. If you don't, then, just look him up. Everybody says he's misogynist and bigoted and everything, and with the riots that happened in California at, I think it was Berkeley, I decided, I'm going to look this guy up and see why the need for such a tantrum. They're saying that he's this hateful person, he's spreading a message of hate. So I found the tour, The Dangerous Faggot, I believe it's called, and I gave him a fair chance. And at first I found some clips where fans would go like, he burns this person, and I'm like, okay, so, he's a troll. Well, we knew he was a troll. That's how he got started, really, if you think about it. And so I started listening, and now I'm not necessarily saying I agree with his attitude. There's a couple things I'm just like, I don't want to know this person in real life. But I agree on a lot of his points, and I do not find him hating most women at all. He hates feminists. But he also does a lot of things and speaks up for the rights of women, especially in the world of Islam. And so this is a lesson I have relearned is don't listen to the propaganda and the hype, and give something a fair chance by doing some research, by going to the ground. And in my case, I went to the ground by finding whole speeches that were uncut as best I could, because cut ones can also be shaped to either, you know, encourage or discourage. I've been listening to him, and he's pretty much preached to the choir a lot of his points, so it's time for me to move on. But it's just a little point of something to remind all of you out there, you know, give things a fair chance even if you don't agree with the platform. And at first I thought I didn't agree with him because of a couple of things he had said, and to my surprise, I was wrong. You know how some researchers and show hosts and even, you know, I used to do this thing, they tell the same story over and over again, so that if you're going to hear one talk with them, you're going to have heard them all. As always, yes, I'm here to talk about magnetic coils and their application with a water-based engine, but first I have to tell you all about the story of my kinky sex event with 2 reptilians and a Pleiadian. And it's, you know, and you know they're going to do this story over and over again, no matter how old or how young they are. They're always telling this story. I would rip out my hair, but then I would be left without a wig. And it just lately, that's just been everywhere I go. And I am just like, facepalm. Come on, can we move on to a new topic? I know all about your reptilian love life now. Let's move on. Let's go to some new information. Shut up. That's what I've been saying a couple of times. Shut up. And I have to admit, guys, I actually will rewatch some of my videos on occasion just to make sure I'm not going to tell you the same story over again. You know, if you're truly interested in my stories, you'll go back and find the old stuff. Otherwise, why would I bore you with telling the same story over again? I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. Everyone does it. But lately, I just